Last week, I talked about the Las Vegas Raiders facing the Baltimore Ravens. I mentioned that the Raiders had a real chance to beat the Ravens, and they proved me right. The Raiders were a much better team than what they showed in Week 1. I pointed out that both teams play a conservative style of football, focusing on winning the turnover battle and staying in the game until the end. It was clear that if the Raiders played a clean game, they could come out on top. And, as we saw, the Raiders did win. Now, this week, the Carolina Panthers are in a similar spot to where the Raiders were last week. Some people think the Panthers aren't a strong team, but I completely disagree. In fact, I believe the Panthers have a lot of talent, especially on the offensive side. Their offensive line has the potential to be one of the best in the league, possibly even top 5. Let's talk about their O-line. They've got two of the highest paid guards in the league, Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. Their left tackle, Ikem Ekwonu, is a player I was really impressed with coming out of college. He hasn't been perfect, but a lot of that can be attributed to him protecting a rookie quarterback like Bryce Young. Still, I believe he's going to prove himself as one of the top left tackles in the NFL. On the right side, they have solid players like Taylor Moton and Austin Corbett, who hold down the center and right tackle positions. People don't give the Panthers enough credit. Their offensive line has a tough, aggressive mindset. These guys come out ready to dominate, and although it hasn't all come together yet for the Panthers, remember that a quarterback has a big influence on the outcome of a game. Despite their challenges, the Panthers' offensive line ranks 5th in pass blocking win rate after the first 2 weeks. More than just stats, if you watch the tape, you can see that this O-line is the real deal. Damian Lewis, for example, is consistently overpowering opposing defensive tackles. That's why he's earning $15 million a year as a left guard. And Robert Hunt is worth his $20 million salary as a right guard. These guys are legit, and the Raiders can't afford to overlook the Panthers. This is not a guaranteed win for the Raiders. I'd say it's a 65-35 split in favor of the Raiders, but that doesn't mean they can relax. If they come in thinking they'll just roll over the Panthers, they're in for a surprise. Also, with Andy Dalton stepping in for Bryce Young, that shakes things up. Dalton replacing Young has been a big story, and it puts the Raiders at a disadvantage. We don't have tape on Dalton in this specific offense, even though we've seen him play over the years. But this is a different coach and a different offense. The coach is trying things downfield that Bryce Young just wasn't able to do. Now, I don't want to get into Bryce Young too much. I like him, and I believe he'll bounce back and get another opportunity. However, Andy Dalton brings a very unique challenge. He's a veteran quarterback, and that experience matters. With Bryce Young or even a talented player like Lamar Jackson, you can run certain defensive strategies like a cover 2, then switch it to a cover 1 at the last second, or use different coverage schemes like cover 6 or cover 4. Lamar might not read it perfectly, and Bryce probably wouldn't either. But Andy Dalton, he will see it. He's been around the NFL for years, had a lot of success, and understands these defensive tricks. And don't underestimate the playmakers that Dalton has at his disposal. Adam Thielen is still a solid weapon, even though he's getting older. The Panthers also have veteran wide receivers like Deontay Johnson and David Moore. Then there are the younger guys, Xavier Legette, who was a first-round pick this year, and Jonathan Mingo, a second-round pick from last year. Mingo, in fact, was the 32nd overall pick, practically a first-rounder himself. Both of these young receivers have great potential, and Mingo could really turn into a standout player. Let's not forget about their running backs. Chuba Hubbard is solid, and Miles Sanders is a reliable back as well. While their tight ends might not stand out, their backup tight end, Donovan Sanders, is fast and explosive, though he's still developing as a rookie. The Raiders need to be ready for guys like him because he could break out at any moment. The Panthers are a much better team than people give them credit for, especially with Andy Dalton running the offense. He knows how to get the ball to his playmakers and let them work in space. The Raiders cannot overlook this team. In fact, I'd argue that the Panthers could be more dangerous this week than the Chargers were in Week 1. To be honest, I didn't think the Chargers played well at all in their first game, and I'm surprised they're 2-0. But regardless, the Raiders should not sleep on the Carolina Panthers. This team has what it takes to compete. All right, we've talked about the offense, so let's move on to the defense. In my opinion, the Carolina Panthers defense has some flaws. I'm not very confident that they'll be able to stop the Raiders easily. Honestly, I'm not sure who on their defense poses a real threat to the Raiders. That said, Jadeveon Clowney deserves a mention. He was the first overall pick years ago, and for most of his career, he didn't live up to the hype. But last year, Clowney had a fantastic season. He was one of the best defensive ends in the NFL while playing for Baltimore, though he didn't get the recognition he deserved. Still, he dominated, and now he's coming in to face the Raiders. He'll definitely be eager to get after the quarterback and continue proving himself as a top player. Clowney is probably the biggest threat the Panthers have on defense. They also have Shaq Thompson, who was a first-round pick about 8 or 9 years ago. Thompson is still a good player, but he's not quite the same as he used to be. After that many years as a linebacker, he's probably slowing down a bit. Then there's J.C. Horn, a cornerback who was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. Some people were really high on him, but he's had some injury setbacks. I think he had a season-ending injury last year, or maybe it was the year before. Either way, Horn has shown some potential and will be looking to bounce back. Jordan Fuller is another name to watch. He's a solid safety who can make an impact. And the Panthers have one of the best slot corners in the league, Troy Hill. Hill is a very solid player who knows how to hold his own on the field. Again, when it comes to defense, I don't think the Panthers have many players who can stop the Raiders. However, we have to recognize that the Raiders' defense is very good, and I think we can all agree on that. The Panthers' offense also has the potential to be strong, especially with Andy Dalton at the helm and the weapons they have. But the real question is, which Raiders' offense will show up? Will it be the unit we saw against the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 1, or the one we saw in the second half against the Baltimore Ravens? If we get the offense from the second half against the Ravens, I believe the Raiders will win this game. If they can connect with Davante Adams and throw to Brock Bowers, push the ball downfield, and score early, they'll be in great shape. On the flip side, if the Raiders have 2 or 3 turnovers, or if they struggle on offense and don't play their style of football, it could be a different story. I'm not fully convinced that this offense is solid yet. I need to see them prove themselves before I can confidently say the Raiders have a good offense this year. Antonio Pierce mentioned that we can expect the Raiders to use more gap schemes moving forward. This is a shift in strategy, as they initially planned to focus on outside zone running. Instead, they're going to go back to what worked for them, power-based concepts. I think we'll see a lot more power running against the Panthers. Now, when it comes to running schemes, there's power and zone running. Power schemes tend to work better against a 4-man front, while zone running is often more effective against a 3-man front. The Panthers use a 3-4 front, so zone runs might have a better chance against them. While most teams play base defense only about 20 to 25% of the time, that's still a significant portion of the snaps the Panthers will face. It'll be interesting to see if the Raiders switch to zone runs when the Panthers line up in a 3-4 front. One thing I've noticed is that Coach McDaniels sometimes doesn't adjust his plays based on the personnel. For instance, if a team has several defensive tackles, he might still try to run right up the middle. That's something to keep an eye on. When it comes to calling plays, it sometimes feels like Coach McDaniels doesn't always adjust based on the personnel on the field. For example, if Davante Adams is in single coverage, he should definitely get the ball. I talked about this in my offensive film breakdown a couple of days ago. I hope McDaniels finds success again like he did against the Ravens. That said, we can't overlook the Carolina Panthers. Even though it's the season opener for the Raiders, the Panthers are fired up and ready to prove themselves. They've made a quarterback change, and the players are motivated. Remember, they're not making this switch late in the season when teams are checked out. They're still fully invested and believe they can turn things around with better quarterback play. For the Raiders, it's crucial to generate pressure on Andy Dalton. He's not the most mobile quarterback, so this is a game where Max Crosby should really shine. Among the defensive line, the center and right tackle are potential weaknesses for the Panthers. While Taylor Moton is a solid right tackle with several years of experience, I still think Max Crosby can take advantage of that matchup. On the other hand, the guards for the Panthers are very good. Adam Butler and Christian Wilkins will be up against strong guards, but I believe the Raiders can exploit the center position. It'll be interesting to see if the Raiders design some defensive line strategies to create one-on-one matchups, particularly against Austin Corbett. For example, if you line up Christian Wilkins over the center and have Butler and another player outside, that could create opportunities for success. Overall, I think the Raiders should win this game, and I'd estimate a 65 to 35 chance in their favor. However, they mustn't underestimate the Panthers. This feels like a classic trap game. I'm excited for this matchup, and I think the Raiders can pull off the win. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with another video.